Hello, everyone. My name is Roberto Cremonini. I'm Chief Innovation Officer at GivingData, and it is my pleasure today to welcome you all to this webinar, where we're going to hear a very interesting, unusual, innovative story of collaborations between three foundations. Before we get started, a couple of housekeeping topics. First of all, the webinar will be recorded, and we will share the recording with all of you who registered and participated as well. We also invite you to engage in a conversation using the chat feature in Zoom. And also, if you have any questions, please submit them through the Q&A feature in Zoom. Last but not least, this is all about knowledge sharing across our community, across our network. And so we invite you to share any ideas, anything that insights, anything that you find interesting or you think it could be useful to the world of philanthropy that you hear in this webinar by sharing on LinkedIn. And if you do so, we ask you that you kindly hashtag GivingData when you post your comment. So let's get started. And one of the interesting things as we were brainstorming this webinar, I was meeting with the speakers, and it's the fact that it took me down walk down memory lane, because way back when I started working on philanthropy, one of the areas that I explored in the foundation where I was working was the concept of networks, and also how philanthropy can leverage networks actually to increase impacts and results and efficiencies in the sector. And I was part of a group that was called the Network of Network Funders. So we formed a network that convened over the course of multiple years, and eventually produced a report that was co-written by all of us with the help of Monitor Institute and GEO. And this report, called Catalyzing Network for Social Change, covered a lot of topics, including the topic of how you work with a network mindset, cultivating networks, and how you can assess and learn about network impact. Now, it wasn't published yesterday, but I still think it's a very good resource if you want to get started on this topic. Speaking of which, there are two concepts that I would like to share with you today that I think are very important to understand a little bit of the theory, if you will, behind the practice that our three speakers are going to share. And the first concept is this concept of excess capacity. So around the time when we were exploring this thing is in the Network of Network Funders, we discovered this book where there was this concept that was described of the excess capacity. And in a nutshell, it basically means that out there in the world, there are a lot of resources, a lot of assets that often get unused. And networks have the ability to identify those resources and make a better use of them, introduce efficiencies by utilizing unused resources. Now, this may sound very complicated, but if I show you the next slide, I'm sure you all understand what I mean. So everybody here probably has at a certain point used, but at least heard of Airbnb. What's happening here is that we have these homes that are at a certain point vacant, nobody lives in them. And so through the network that Airbnb has created, there's an opportunity to use the excess capacity of that home and have other people take advantage of it. So this is an example of how excess capacity in real estate is used. And that's actually one of the things that we're going to hear in the webinar today. The other concept that is intriguing here and is very relevant in terms of understanding the efficiencies and the power of network and relationships is this concept of slow hunch. Often we think that great innovations, great ideas happen because there's a genius out there that sits under an apple tree, the apple falls from the tree, and they discover, dynamics, their laws of dynamics. But actually the reality is that it's proven over and over that a lot of the great ideas, major breakthroughs, particularly in the social sector, happen when a little idea, a small hunch, collides with another hunch. And so the importance of creating a space where ideas can mingle and swap is very relevant, because that's how innovation, that's how breakthroughs are created. And once again, a lot of the ideas that are going to come to the table today probably were generated because of the foundations that we're going to talk to, that you're going to hear from today, have actually created this space where their ideas and the ideas of their grantees and their networks can mingle and swap. Enough for me talking. I'd like to introduce our three panelists today. We have here with us Annie Appleton, who is the program manager at the Sartain Lanier Family Foundation, Holly Bills, who is the grants manager at Tull Charitable Foundation, and Rachel Sprecher, who is the relationships and operations manager at the R. Howard Dobbs Jr. Foundation, all in Atlanta. So over to you and your networks and your connection to hear a little bit more about this fascinating story. I'm going to stop sharing.
Hi, y'all. We are so excited to be here today. When we were talking with the GivingData team about some of the ways we've been collaborating over the last year and beyond, got excited about the thought of just sharing a few ways that our three foundations have come together. So I'll kick us off and just share a little bit of background. In 2022, the lease for the Sartain Lanier Family Foundation was coming to an end. And our executive director, Pat Lummis, said to her friend and colleague, Gabby Sheely, the executive director of the Tull Foundation, hey, y'all have 2 extra office spaces in your building. Can we sublease? And that ended up being a tester for this idea of co-locating and sharing an office space. This is not a merger of the 3 foundations, still very much kept separate missions, separate ways of working, but this initial decision was coming in having some shared office spaces. So then it really turned into David Whitenhauer, executive director of the Dobbs Foundation, he coming in and saying, wait, I want to get in on this action as well. And so the 3 foundations really did begin to come together and decide, let's move in and find an office space for the 3 of us. So our 3 foundations, Sartain Lanier is a team of 2, Tull a team of 2 with an intern on the way, and then Dobbs a team of 3. And so with all of us being 3 really small foundations with a focus here in Georgia, 2 of us more specifically in Metro Atlanta, there can a lot of times be loneliness when you only have a small team. And I think that I can speak for Rachel and Holly in saying how grateful we are that our executive leadership thought about how to create an environment where we could all come together and have more colleagues, more people in the office, people to bounce ideas off of and collaborate with. And so the hope for not just the cost savings and the convenience, but really creating a stronger community with more people all trying to do similar work was the core of why the decision was made for us to co-locate. And Holly, so my colleague, and also I can see you through the window of our shared office. I'll pass it off to you to share a little bit more about some of the rationales and hope for our co-location.
Absolutely. So thank you, Annie. So as you just mentioned, the underlying rationale when we decided to co-locate were the cost efficiencies that would be gained. But if we're being completely honest, if we had left it at only that, we would not have been as successful as we have been able to be. It was vitally important to us all that while we were co-locating together, we maintain our separate identities and honor the individual legacy of founders and families. You can see that represented from our logos to our founders' portraits. And Roberto, if you can share those pictures real quick. Perfect. So the logos that you see on the left, that is the exterior wall of our conference room. And to the right, the mission statements are located between our kitchen and copier area. And then on the following slide, we have our founders' portraits, which are in the hallway. So it really does flow through the entire space that these are 3 separate foundations co-located together. We knew from the beginning that while we may have varying grant-making strategies and history, our personalities and working styles were conducive to meaningful collaboration. So to be clear, we all have different skill sets as well as personalities and working styles. And in fact, we all took the DISC assessment before we co-located, and between the 7 of us in the office, we had representation from every single personality type. So yes, you can have diversity of thought and have a cohesive collegial place of business. People have to be comfortable being able to express their full self in a way that is productive to the respective foundation and the entire office as an ecosystem. And we all rallied around that point. Our hope was that leaning into a collaboration would lead to additional resource sharing above and beyond the specific expenses we share. But to go into what those specific expenses are, some of the cost savings we have realized are IT vendors, kitchen and office supplies, internet costs, consultant fees, rent, and even furniture. We also utilize the same vendors, so even if we pay them separately, like our phone service providers and accounting and finance consultants, it creates a lot of efficiencies with those. So for instance, since we have the same accounting and finance consultants, it's greatly eased the many reimbursements that go back and forth between the 3 foundations. And we have a cost tracker where we enter all the expenses and we reconcile them quarterly, and everyone pays and receives their applicable share. But in the case of larger expenses like rent, those are reimbursed immediately for everyone's cash flow purposes. And then going back to our physical space, within our shared office space, we have a conference room and we have a huddle room to meet with grantees, and have found great efficiencies in combining meetings, one of which is actually today. So at one of our meetings earlier this month, we realized that the Tull Foundation had scheduled a meeting with the grant seeker, and Dobbs was meeting with them the following day. So we were able to combine those and save the grant seeker valuable time. So having those 2 spaces, a smaller huddle room and a larger conference room, allows for separate meetings to happen simultaneously and enables the work of each foundation to continue. We do have a shared calendar specifically for those rooms so everyone can see, to prevent double booking. I would say that resource sharing has exceeded our initial hopes and has expanded into things such as revising our employee handbook. While we're not looking to have the exact same handbook, because remember, individual culture is important, we are moving towards the same format, legal definitions, and shared policies, but then differing on certain specific foundation policies like PTO and benefits. And for the collaborative employee handbook project, we even had another foundation join in who is not co-located with us. And so once we finish the draft, we will all cost share the cost of an employment attorney reviewing that document. And then finally, we're in the beginning stages of a risk assessment where our consultant will review our 3 foundations individually, but we will also cost share that expense. And some of those anticipated items that consultant would review are the types and amounts of insurance that we have, such as general liability, directors and officers, fiduciary responsibility, etc. So we've seen a lot of rationales and seen a lot of hopes realized, and I think we're just looking to continue that as we progress with this co-location. But one of the larger projects we undertook together was to adopt the same GMS, which Rachel can share more about.
Can I stop you for a second here, because this is great. First of all, thank you for this great introduction and also for being impeccably on time according to our timeline here. So I'm just going to delay us a little bit now, but I want to say 3 things. First of all, you can tell who has the title, the word operation managers in our title. So we heard a lot of emphasis on operations here, and it's great. The second thing, you said something very interesting, Holly. So the fact we're all different, right? But and we work together. So again, if I can geek out a little bit on network theory, one of the key principles of efficient and good networks is the fact that we connect on our similarities, but we grow on our differences. And so that's exactly what you heard here. Again, we're different, but because of that, they grow more and they can be more effective and impactful. And the last thing that resonated a lot with me personally is the fact that when you were talking about the project that you were doing, I think it was related to employees or you were working with, you brought someone from your networks, they're not physically co-located, but you brought another foundation into the mix. And again, efficiencies that you gained there in collaborating not only between the three of you, but with other foundations in the area. In fact, that picture that I showed with your photos in the middle at the core of the network, and all of your connections and who we were bringing to the picture was not unintentional, basically. Good. So thank you for that. Let's move on and talk about, yes, this what you had started talking about, Holly, which is at a certain point, there was another decision beyond the decision to collocate. It was the decision of adopting the same GMS. And so same kind of question. So how did that get started? And what were you hoping to achieve? And, what were the expectations for that?
Yeah, so our foundation, the Dobbs Foundation, had actually made a decision long before this co-location was a glimmer in someone's eye, or whatever the expression is, to adopt a new GMS. We were unhappy with our product, not to disparage the product, but had it for a while. And actually, on my first day of work at the Dobbs Foundation around 2.5 years ago, my boss said my first project was going to be to do an analysis to find us a new system. Our lease was coming to, or our contract was coming to an end, and we decided not to renew, but had to find a new one. So I was charged with doing this landscape analysis and making a final recommendation for a new product. And I used the Peak Grantmaking consumer guide to select about 10 systems to demo, and went through an assessment project and a selection process, actually with help from another GivingData user. So another example of collaboration, MJ Thorne, who I don't believe is on today, but she's another GivingData user here in Atlanta. And she had done the similar process to land on her product and shared her rubrics with me and all of her paperwork for that process and other materials. So ultimately, GivingData emerged as our product of choice. And simultaneously, while we were getting close to making this final selection, the plans for co-location were materializing. And since we were discussing some other shared vendors, like Holly mentioned, like IT, it dawned on us that it could be really helpful and beneficial if we all shared the same grants management system as well, and all onboarded at the same time. So we approached our sister foundations. Sartain Lanier was actually coming up on a close of their product as well with their contract, and they were open to it. And the Tull Foundation would have to break their contract, but we're intrigued. And I think it says a lot about their trust in us as colleagues that they were willing to kind of trust my judgment on the selection. And we all did the demo, and they decided to join us. So having the same system has been extremely beneficial. First, it made us grow closer faster due to us taking on a big project. I think when you enter into a big project kind of early on, you're forced to work really closely together. And so as one of our first efforts together through this onboarding, we learned each other's working styles really fast. It's also been really invaluable for troubleshooting issues with the software, learning new features together, thought partnering with each other about how to maximize the tool. We even share the same client success manager. So that helps us when the three of us need to speak with them. It makes for more efficiency, and we're all on the same email thread together. And most importantly, it's really deepened our work together. Of course, it's one thing to ask another foundation, a question like, how do you do reporting? But when you're doing it in the same system, it kind of supersizes the efficiencies. So, and then I think what's also exciting is we're building this contingent of GivingData users in Atlanta, which has helped us kind of create a community of practice. And with stronger numbers, we can get benefits like a lunch and learn in Atlanta that happened recently, which I think we'll talk about, or learning other special features together.
That's great, Rachel. And actually, one little commercial break here. About GD Connect, our annual conference. So this year, GD Connect will be in Atlanta. So we're going to Atlanta and we hope many of you online today and more will join us for GD Connect 2024 in Atlanta at the end of September. Great, thank you. So that was a great intro. So I would like to go a little bit deeper now into this, some of the benefits that you experience. So how has the co-location, in addition to what we already heard, how has the co-location, the going with the same GMS contributed to more efficiency in your own personal roles at the foundation? And because we have to think about the organization, but it's also very important about thinking about the people in the organization, you in your role. And then the second thing, of course, is the grantee experience. How has the co-location and the use of the same GMS impacted the grantee experience? So who wants to go first?
I'll kick us off. Jeremiah, love sharing some love in the chat with you. I joined the Sartain Lanier Family Foundation in May, and this was my first role as a grant maker. And so getting to join the team when this work was already in motion, knowing that there was going to be moving into the same office in August of 2023, knowing that Rachel had done the research for everyone to decide that we'd be adopting this new system, I came in right in time for the transition. So I had about 1 month to explore our current GMS, and then had the opportunity to go through the full transition to GivingData. And so one of the things that was already in the works was the 3 foundations with the full teams would all come together, and we really chunked it out over a period of maybe 6 months where we thought through, okay, we're moving into this new system with GivingData. We have to build out our new application. What does the grantee portal look like? How do we do reporting? How are we tracking our engagements with grantees? Because we were moving all of that data over from another system, or for some of us, putting some of that data into a system for the first time, by going through that process together, we were able to chunk it out in pieces and have those conversations along the way. So we really started a lot with the ways that our application was put together and thinking about the grantee experience. So each of us on our own pulled, what does our application currently look like in the portal we were using at the time? What were the questions we were asking? At what stage? How did we go about using that information? And we had a lot of really long conversations. What we thought was going to be maybe 1 or 2 meetings turned into 5 or 6, because we had to grapple with some of those difficult questions of, oh, oops, we've been asking this question and we maybe aren't using that information all that much. Or this is a really important question and something that matters deeply to our foundation, to the families and the boards that we work for. But this is actually a better suited conversation to have in person. So maybe that's something we intentionally discuss with a prospective grantee on a site visit, rather than ask them to put something in writing in essay form. So going through that process all together to build out our shared application was very helpful for our personal reflection. And we ended up getting to a place where we don't have a common app, but if you are a grantee applying to Lanier, Dobbs, or Tull, you see a nearly identical application. So it looks the same in terms of it's on the GivingData portal. So once you've already made that account, you know that you have this account with GivingData, how it works. So that's helpful. But then our flow of questions, the framing of the question, the character count, the timing of when it is asked happens nearly identically in our 3 different processes. There's a few differences that have evolved over the last few quarters after we've each gone through a grant cycle and seen there might be something slightly different that our board may or may not need to ask. But that, I think, has been really helpful for our grantees as well, because they're seeing something consistent. And if they're applying at the same time, they don't need to reformat what they're asking. It's the same question framed the same way, and they're able to use that same information. So that I think has been one of the biggest gifts, is just going through the process. And even if you're not in the process of shifting to a new system, just having that scheduled time with colleagues really holds you accountable to doing that deeper reflective work. It's important work, but maybe it's not urgent. And so the fact that we had scheduled meetings encouraged us to stay on track of making some of these changes and improvements. Holly, I know that you were sort of our guru when it came to some specific templates, and so would love to hear your thoughts, but also you've just been a godsend to us. It's like, Holly, you know how to make this Excel doc we can use as a template. Let's just copy whatever you do.
Well, I think we've all saved each other on multiple times, so I think I'll accept that and then extend that commentary to both you and Rachel. But elaborating on what you just said, when we were reviewing our grant application, as part of that discussion, we decided to adopt a revenue and expenses template that the Dobbs Foundation had been using. And we made a couple of edits, but we all utilized that same exact template. Now, when we were in the implementation phase with our GMS, we all had to create document templates, and many of these were individualized, but some were able to be shared. An example of that would be our LOI write-up that uses merge fields. Because we had done the work on the front end and successfully created a common LOI, we were able to divide and conquer. So one person created the LOI write-up, which was then shared with the other foundations to use, saving time for literally everyone involved, because we were not all creating the exact same document. Another critical component is the ongoing sharing of information. So if one of us changes processes, we share what changes we are making and why. So I'll give you a couple of specific examples that the Tull Foundation made recently. We just recently completed our first grant cycle following implementation, and we are now going to decide to request that the 501c3 determination letter is uploaded as part of the grant application. And the reason for that is because we have an annual audit. The auditors require that document as part of their selections. And the IRS portal only provides letters for 2014 forward. So we found that not asking for it up front created unnecessary back and forth between grant seekers and ourselves after they submitted the application. Another item we changed was asking for the number of board members. This is a mapped field in our portal, and after that first round of grant applications, we found that to be a helpful data point for our trustees. And then finally, we made some other further edits to that revenue and expense template I mentioned after receiving some grant seeker feedback. We edited the names of some fields and provided additional definitions and instructions to provide clarity. And we shared this revised template with both Dobbs and the Sartain Lanier Foundation in case they wanted to adopt it in whole or in part. So sharing the what and the why behind the process changes allows one foundation's reactive response to be a proactive response for the other foundations. So anytime you can be proactive instead of reactive, you're building efficiencies individually and as a whole. So the Dobbs and Sartain Lanier Foundation may not make all of the changes that we saw were necessary for our foundation, but because we prioritize communication, they're fully informed and can make their own educated decision as to whether they want to adopt those.
Great.
And
Rachel?
Yeah, I'll share about the GMS. For me, I think it's been the technical help that's been really important for improving efficiencies. So recently I got stuck on implementing a feature of related to Outlook integration. And it would have taken me a really long time to either put in a client support ticket or go to the Knowledge Center for help, but I was able to walk across the hall and just stand over Holly's shoulder and watch her. And similarly, Annie showed Holly how to use her custom fields to maximize how to use the custom fields. So having each other to lean on for the technical aspects of the software has really helped us work smarter and not harder, saving valuable time and allowing for sharing of best practices. And, you know, icing on the cake has been to save money on having to hire maybe a GivingData consultant or additional implementation fees because we have each other and didn't need to pay for more sessions. So as someone who's not very technologically savvy, it's been really beneficial for me and indirectly then our grantees. And I know we're going to switch to grantee experience now, but
it's also Rachel, it's been really fun. I think that when I made this transition to join the Sartain Lanier Family Foundation, I was going from a team of 20 to a team of 2. And so it's really fun. This is just a project that I would have been working on all by myself, and something that maybe wouldn't be all that cool and exciting, like building an LOI write-up template, then became this fun sort of group project, if you will, and had that sense of collaboration and teammates. And so it just makes the work a little bit more enjoyable when you're not doing it by yourself. Even if you knew how to do it alone, it's more enjoyable to bounce ideas off of one another.
Yeah,
so it's been fun having that too.
That's such a good point, because even there's a feature called pending grants that I had heard about and seen, in our demos, or we get emails about something, but I wasn't really using it. And then I was, over in Holly's office, and I was like, "Oh, you use that?" And she's like, "Yeah, let me show you." And I was like, "That is actually pretty cool and fun." So you're right. When you are alone working with the technology, you might miss something, but it's been fun to work on together.
Definitely enjoyable. And I would just say that if we had to tackle this individually, it would have taken a significantly longer amount of time, because we had our group that was bouncing ideas off of we could easily just divide, conquer, get it done. But I would say it would probably take 2 to 3 times the amount of time that it did for us if we had to do that individually.
And so I was about to say, whoever doubted that knowledge is not a philanthropic resource, well, I guess you are the proof that actually knowledge and exchanging knowledge is indeed a philanthropic resource. But speaking of which, let's talk about the impact on the grantee experience. You sort of hinted at it here and there, but let's focus on that a little bit.
Yeah, I'll share one example. There's so many moments where I just this morning was meeting with a grantee partner, and I'm able to come back into the office and brag about the cool work that they're doing, which maybe this is an organization that's a fit for Dobbs or a fit for Tull, maybe not, but it's a really special thing that it's not always the grantee that has to do the sharing of their work. We're sharing that amongst one another and celebrating the good things that our grantee partners are doing. So that's something really special. There's also a lot of times if there's a very specific focus. So for Sartain Lanier, we've ventured into this space of wanting to support the science of reading, literacy instruction happening in Metro Atlanta schools. And I was an educator, but don't know as many of the nonprofits that are doing some of that teacher training that's rooted in the science of reading. We know of a handful, but I'm doing some of my personal research, and I'm having a hard time figuring out who I should be reaching out to and building a relationship with. So I pop over next door to Rachel. Dobbs also has a focus on education in Metro Atlanta, and she rattles off a list of 8 organizations that helps me then focus in on my research. So 2 of those organizations I reached out to directly, and we are now in the process of reviewing applications from them, and it's looking like something that our board is really excited to support in our spring grant cycle. And so maybe those organizations would never have known that Sartain Lanier focused on literacy instruction if Rachel hadn't lifted them up in just a casual conversation in the office. It could be something that really changes or at least can make a dent in the impact of the programming by funneling more dollars in the door for these partners. So really grateful for just countless examples of that even just a small comment can turn into a really strong relationship between a foundation and a grantee.
That's great. Talking about leverage, huh? So that's fantastic. So who wants to go next?
I'll go next. Taking it from a different perspective for the Tull Foundation. So the biggest impact to the grantee experience that Tull has seen, aside from what has already been shared, is our movement to electronic submission of both LOIs and grant applications, as well as reporting. So unlike the Dobbs and the Sartain Lanier Foundation, who had already been doing that on the prior GMS system, this was a new implementation for the Tull Foundation. So prior to that, all of those were coming via email, or in rare instances, even snail mail. So many times grant seekers were submitting documents that were too lengthy or did not adequately address the information we needed on the organization or the request itself. And sometimes a particular attachment may have even been forgotten. Making this transition allowed us to customize our LOIs, grant applications, and reports. All narrative questions are asked individually and list a suggested word count so that the grant seeker can get an idea of how much information they should put in each section. Requests for uploaded documents are also listed individually, and we provide an optional tab on the grant application where up to 3 documents can be uploaded if they so choose. Classifying certain fields as required will alert them if a field is blank and will not allow them to submit until all required fields are answered. And so this has impacted their experience significantly because it prioritizes the best use of their time and provides more clarity, so they're more confident in their own submission. They're not trying to guess at what we are want to hear from them. It's clearly stated how many words, so they have an approximate idea. And we've always been here to answer questions. We have received feedback on this new system, and the grant seekers love it. It's so much easier. It's getting back to one of our foundation goals of transparency. So it's really tying in everything together from our values to grant seeker value.
Rachel?
Yeah, I think for me, the thing that's impacted the grantee experience most from this shared co-location has been our monthly topical lunches that Annie mentioned. They've really pushed me to rethink the grantee experience and get a lot of great ideas from my colleagues. So at these lunches, we have a different topic every time, and we talk about things like trends in philanthropy and trust-based philanthropy, reporting, transparency, access. Once again, an article you might see in your email from, the Chronicle of Philanthropy, you might just skim it and delete it. But with this now, Holly recently said, hey, did everyone see this? And we spent some time talking about it and really kind of unpacked it. And that's valuable for our grantees because now we might be implementing something that we never thought of before. And it's helped me rethink how we do site visits. Recently, we had a lunch where we discussed how we communicate declinations to our grantees. And it's an opportunity for us too to share some things we're doing to improve the grantee experience. Like we have open office hours every month where we invite anyone who's interested in learning more about our foundation to come. And so we'd love for Holly and Annie's foundations to do them too, but in the meantime, they can send people to them. And they have sent grantees to them and have recommended to potential grantee partners to come on our office hour webinars and learn about our foundation and potentially submit a grant. So it's been great. Do we have a picture too from the shout out board? Maybe that's the last
we
thing
do.
we can
We
can share. And so we do have a shout out board where it's a whiteboard in our kitchen where we share examples of this collaboration and shout outs and shine and how someone helped us or cool things happening. So this is another place where we put things that might have positively impacted grantee experience. So you see one up in the corner. Annie helped Hope Givers, one of our grantees, get some money from the CDC. So yeah.
This is another place where your hunches can collide and then great things happen out of those. So great. Thank you. As Casey reminded us all, so we're about to go into the last part of the webinar, and we kept the Q&A session at the end. But please start lining up your questions in the Q&A sessions so that we can engage you all in a conversation here. So I'd like to go into the last part of our webinar here before the Q&A. And that's the question I have is the classic question that comes at the end of a webinar like this. So lessons learned. And also what it's very interesting is, you know, we talked about the hopes that you had and the expectations, but any unexpected consequences, both on the positive sides and also on the challenging side that you experienced, that you were not anticipating at the very beginning when you entered this collaboration?
I'll let Annie take a break from going first, so I'll take this one.
Great, thank you, Holly.
They say that the best defense is a good offense. So knowing in advance that we were all co-locating together, we anticipated there would be growing pains and a need for flexibility. So we implemented proactive team meetings where we all shared and learned about everyone's personality and working style, in addition to the more mundane things like schedules. We set agenda items for everything from understanding which DISC personality type everyone is, or what a closed office door means, or the best way to handle any issues that may arise in the future. Our unanimous consensus on that point was respectful but direct upfront communication, in case you were wondering. Other topics covered were division of duties and ensuring that the split is equitable so that no single foundation is handling more than their fair share. We even developed a kitchen calendar where the responsibility for the dishwasher rotates by foundation on a monthly basis, and it's posted on the refrigerator as a reference.
There goes the operation manager again.
We really tried to mitigate any areas that had the potential to create friction, large or small, and to get ahead of them. As we settled in, we adjusted our team meeting schedule, going from weekly to bi-weekly. Currently, we have one Zoom meeting and one monthly luncheon, and both of those happen every month, with agendas and notes on a shared document so that if anyone misses a meeting, they can review what was covered. And these meetings have evolved from grant making process alignment to construction meetings to planning meetings, and now primarily they serve as information resource sharing, along with talking through system improvements. And the most important part is the team building that happens as we're having those meetings. We've been in our co-located space for just over 7 months now, and everything's continued to run smoothly. A crucial part of our success has been having buy-in from every single person in our office, proactive planning beyond the nuts and bolts, and then ongoing continual collaboration and communications.
Thank you, Holly.
I'll speak to, I don't know if I would, to Polly, I saw your question of thinking about some common pain points. We are still very much in the honeymoon phase, and to Holly's point, like everyone's cleaning up. There's no real issues. Like we have enough space. Like we're lucky that we are in a 3,000 square foot office space that we've got closed door offices, extra huddle space, extra conference rooms. There was one day where we realized there were 2 board meetings scheduled at the same time. What were the chances? But we just called up a foundation that's in the same building and asked to borrow their conference room. And so really just tiny blips. The one thing that it's been interesting, and I'm again new to philanthropy, so trying to understand what this power dynamic is like and being on this side of the table, is when we initially were first in this office, if someone was meeting with a grantee partner or a nonprofit leader or a community member that served on the board of a nonprofit and they were in the office, it was an interesting experience to be caught unawares that you might be bumping into someone who your foundation recently declined a grant to them, or you knew that they were planning to apply for the upcoming cycle, but are really trying to think about fairness of access. And so what are we doing if someone's really good friends with one foundation? Are we giving them an unfair advantage with access to all of that, which means people who don't have a shoe-in with one of the foundations, there's a less likelihood that they would get access to any of us. And so trying to balance that with whenever we have people visiting in this space, we share in our meetings amongst the 3 foundations who's going to be in office in the next few weeks, share when they're going to be there, what that purpose is for, and then are able to discuss and say, yeah, I love to pop in and say hello, or hey, if my door is closed, like I'm working and need to be able to be focused with my time. So that's something we've worked through. And so I don't know how much I would call it a pain point, but I do think you start to see where different foundations maybe have different perspectives around who the ideal, what the right investment is or the best fit for a partner. And it doesn't always make sense on the outside. So we have a lot of those conversations internally, and it helps you kind of put pen to paper for yourself of where there's the best fit. So then that can lead to being more explicit with a prospective grantee about the likelihood of funding coming through or not. But yeah, something that I'm still trying to make sense of and we're processing as well.
That's great. Thank you, Annie. Who goes next?
I go next, and that's my fault, Annie, because I invite everyone to our office because I'm so proud of it. I just want to show.
I love people. We want people. It's just sometimes you have to be like,
yeah.
Wait, wait, are you about to ask me about an application you submitted and I haven't seen it yet? Or like, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know what I'm allowed to say at this stage or not. And I mean, being unfair. And so it's wonderful. We want an open door. We want partnerships. But I'm realizing why you end up seeing foundations kind of stay in their ivory tower, because you feel guilty if you're face to face with someone that you know you're not going to fund, but they're so deserving and needing of it. So we want the open door. It's just like learning how to be transparent and like good people. It's just a process.
Yeah. So no, there's definitely some sensitive things. So I'll wrap up and say, I think some unexpected consequences for me was one, just how much I needed social interaction. I didn't realize how isolating it was as a small staff, and sometimes not seeing anyone. So that has been a really amazing, unexpected consequence. I think I was one of the small hunches, or the slow hunches, but to actually realize it has been really invaluable. And then the other thing I didn't really think about is how many joint meetings we could have, not only with grant seekers, but with some of our fundraising consultant partners who want to do feasibility studies with us. They can likely, we're all 3 going to be on their list, and so we can knock it out all together. So saving a lot of time and just scheduling one or in-person meeting. And I really think my only regret is that we didn't extend this offer to more small staff foundations in our community, because we do have, as we've mentioned, some other foundations that are small that come and join us for certain things, but I sort of wish that we could have a nonprofit or philanthropic village, maybe, where there's more of us together, or at least that more foundations consider this kind of model. We ask our nonprofit partners to collaborate and partner together, and suggest even moving in together and sharing office space to them. So why not walk the walk and talk the talk? So perhaps you're inspired today to think about this, and we would definitely encourage and recommend it.
Yeah, what you just said, Rachel, resonates a lot with me as well, because that was one of the things that when I was working at this foundation, we were trying to create more networks and more collaborations among the nonprofits in the city of Boston. One of the things was also the creation of these spaces, right? So there are nonprofit centers and places where multiple nonprofits can have their offices, can go and do the work. But it's very interesting that in your case is 3 foundations who decide to do that, right? And so it's a little bit of a different model. I think you said it several times during the webinar, it's like practice what you preach, or role model, basically what you're asking the grantee partners to do or what you're inviting them to do. And so this is actually, again, another great example of how well foundations can do it too. You can really role model and lead the way. I know you, Annie, you answered it. Oh, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say that I do think that this move of being in the same office, the greatest benefits really have been around staff experience, like being more efficient, being more effective in our day-to-day roles. Mary, I really love your question and the chat. And this is honestly a space that we're really just starting to dip our toes into together. We might be sharing with one another some celebrations of some positive impacts that a specific grantee of ours might have had, and we share that bright spot, which could lead to another foundation pursuing a partnership with them. But we've just started to have conversations around our reporting. Currently with the Sartain Lanier Family Foundation, we have very little reporting requirements. We are like just starting to think through some shifts to that process. And so when it comes to grant outcomes or what those metrics might be for measuring impact, I think we've got 3 different foundations with 3 different viewpoints of what you ask for, how you measure that, what success looks like. Are you looking for short-term, long-term, qualitative, quantitative? Like it just, there's so much there. But in Atlanta, in the South, I mean, all of philanthropy, there's so many incredible larger scale organizations that bring people together for some of that shared learning. There's a lot of funding and learning collaboratives that happen in our community where we do some of that learning and sharing with more of our peers. And it's really been the co-locating in the offices has been more in the roots of sort of that, the more like logistics of it all, like how might we format a report, but we're thinking more broadly with others about what we're even tracking and why or how. So I would say not sure how much we've gotten into that space yet because of office co-locating.
Well, work on it. So the next year we're going to have another webinar, and the topic is going to be exactly that. How you learn, how you monitor, how you evaluate together, how have you created, the space to do that together as 3 foundations. No pressure there. I don't want to end on the negative. So gear up another question for us or more than one question. We have still 7 minutes here to go. But I wanted to, Dipali, I like your question. Annie answered it. Rachel, Holly, anything that you would like to add to Dipali's question in terms of some of the common pain points that you've discovered and how the collaboration has helped them? Anything that comes to mind or that you want to repeat? I mean, you shared a lot today, so.
I think Annie did a great job of answering that question comprehensively. So there's not much that I would add to hers other than, this is a work in progress. And so we don't expect to have all the answers right now, but looking forward to see where this takes us.
Yeah, Rachel? And I think I would only add that I think it's a pain point and a blessing that when you get a glimpse into other foundations' processes that maybe are different than yours, you're like, and you want to adopt it, but you really can't just because of, the different trustee dynamics or donor intent, or, there are some barriers that we can't do much about. I think that has been frustrating because you're like, oh, I can see the possibilities, but, for different reasons, we can't implement them. So, but there's the plus side is that you can at least use it to start a conversation. But yeah, I think that has been the only frustrating thing. It's like, oh man, I wish we could fund what they fund, or wish we, did this process that way. And so, yeah, it'll hopefully down the line, maybe we'll be able to make some of those changes like we already have, but
and Rachel, you mentioning trustees, something that we did back in October after we had moved into the office, and we're so proud of all the beautifully reframed founders' portraits. And we brought all 3 boards together and had a big lunch, and then invited everyone to come down and see the office space. And so that's been something that has been exciting, and we're only starting to think through. We've had this amazing collaboration at the staff level, and now thinking about what are we doing to facilitate some of those closer relationships amongst our trustees so that they're having some organized places where they're coming together with a smaller group of their peers to share their viewpoints and their thoughts on their philanthropic practices and the ways the foundation structures its giving. And so that's been really exciting. A lot of that work lives with our executive directors and with our board chairs, but by having this shared physical space, it made sense to have a lunch with all three organizations. And one example that was shared there, the Tull Foundation's chair is Beverly Tatum, and she was able to speak to the full group of trustees and speak to the reflections that the Tull Foundation has that were shared by grantees' perception on Tull's commitment to racial equity in their work. And so what an amazing space for people to be with their peers sitting on a foundation board to hear what others are thinking about. That doesn't need to necessarily come from, or isn't maybe even the right place sometimes for it to come from staff, at least at the levels that we're at today.
I think that leads to another point, which we spoke about earlier, about how important it is to have buy-in on the staff level, but we also needed the buy-in of all of our trustees and the collective board of directors for this to happen, because if they were not supportive, we would not all three be sitting here. But I think that speaks to the forward thinking of each of our trustee boards and willing to try something new out, and trusting the staff of each foundation that we would make it work. And so I think that they were very pleased to have that get together and get to know each other. So they, you know, when they come to see us, they're also seeing who else is in this office, what their priorities are. And I think that they have really seen this as an opportunity to move beyond those hard cost savings, and to see where we will all go.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much. I think we're basically at time. I don't see other questions coming in. I think some of them have been answered already in the chat. To the three of you and your organizations and your networks, I really want to say we're very grateful at GivingData. You shared your knowledge, you shared your experience. Thank you for leading, role modeling, and inspiring us whole in a new way of coming together as foundations and impacting the sector and do good work. And to all of you who are out there who joined us today and listened to this very interesting and innovative conversation, thank you for being here with us. We hope to see you all at GD Connect. We hope to see you at Peak, those of you who are going to Peak next week. And share on LinkedIn, reach out to us. Let's continue the conversation. These are very, very important topics for philanthropy. We do care deeply, and we want to partner with you and continue the conversation together to make the world a better place for all. Thank you, and till the next time.